Coffee, for millions, it's a morning ritual. To others, it's an obsession, a culture, even a way of life. But how did a simple cup of coffee become a global phenomenon? And who was responsible for transforming it into something more? Most would point to one man, Howard Schultz. His name is synonymous with Starbucks, the brand that turned coffee into an empire. But what if I told you Schultz didn't actually create Starbucks? That the foundation of this billion-dollar empire was laid by someone else? Well, the real story isn't as straightforward as you might think. To uncover the truth, we need to go back to where it all began, to the moment a simple idea set the stage for a revolution in coffee culture. Starbucks' story began in 1971 with a man named Gordon Bowker. While traveling in Italy, he tasted a cappuccino that changed everything. He had expected the same coffee experience he was used to in the United States, but what he found was entirely different. Unlike the cheap, instant coffee popular in America, Italian coffee was rich, flavorful, and crafted with care. When Gordon returned home, he couldn't shake the experience. He shared his discovery with his friends, and together, they set out to improve the quality of coffee in the US. That's how Starbucks was born. But it wasn't the Starbucks we know today. The original store in Seattle didn't sell brewed coffee. It sold high-quality coffee beans and equipment for people to make better coffee at home. It was a niche business with no ambition for global expansion. Their goal was simple: to introduce Americans to better coffee. For the first decade, Starbucks remained a small operation with just 4 stores, all in Seattle. It wasn't built for rapid growth, but it did catch the attention of one man, Howard Schultz. Howard's journey to success had been anything but easy. He came from a struggling family and worked his way through college by selling his blood. By 1981, he had climbed the corporate ladder to become vice president of a company that supplied Starbucks with coffee-making equipment. That's when he first heard about the small but thriving business. Curious, he visited a Starbucks store in Seattle, and what he saw left him stunned. Howard instantly recognized something special. Starbucks wasn't just selling coffee, it was creating an experience. He knew the company had potential, and he wanted to be a part of it. But there was a problem. Gordon and his partners weren't looking for new leadership, and they weren't interested in expanding. Even Howard's own friends and family thought he was making a mistake. Why leave a stable, successful career for a small, local coffee business? But Howard saw something they didn't. For over a year, Howard persistently pursued a role at Starbucks, convinced that he could help turn it into something much bigger. Eventually, Gordon and his co-founders gave in and let him join. But what Howard truly envisioned for Starbucks remained a mystery. Well, that was until a trip to Italy opened his eyes to something no one else saw. What he discovered there would change everything, if only his partners were willing to listen. Howard had spent months learning the ins and outs of Starbucks, but he still wasn't sure where he fit in. Then came a business trip to Milan, and suddenly, everything clicked. Walking through the streets of Italy, he noticed something different about the way people consumed coffee. The cafes weren't just places to grab a quick cup and leave. They were alive with energy. Baristas greeted customers by name, regulars had their usual drinks prepared before they even ordered, and strangers sat together, engaged in conversation over cups of coffee. The atmosphere was warm and inviting. It was nothing like the United States, where coffee was treated as fuel, something to be brewed at home or bought in a hurry and taken to go. Howard was mesmerized. He spent days hopping between cafes, studying the way they operated. He wasn't just paying attention to the drinks, he was watching the rhythm of the business, the way baristas could relate with customers, the way the spaces encouraged people to remain in the building, and the way customers were entertained. By the time he returned to the US, he knew exactly what Starbucks was missing. Excited, he pitched the idea to his partners. But instead of enthusiasm, he was met with resistance. Starbucks was a retail store, they argued, not a bar. Their business was selling beans and equipment, not running cafes. To them, there was no reason to take such a risk when what they had was already working. Howard had two choices: stay and let his vision die, or leave and build it himself. He walked away, but that was only the beginning. What came next would push him to his limits in ways he never imagined. Convincing Gordon and his partners was impossible. No matter how passionately Howard argued for his vision, they refused to change direction. Starbucks was a retail business, and that's how they wanted it to stay. So, in 1987, Howard made a bold move. He left Starbucks and started his own company, Il Giornale, named after an Italian newspaper. Just as he had faced resistance when trying to join Starbucks, his decision to leave was met with the same skepticism. Walking away from a thriving business to start from scratch seemed reckless, but Howard was certain he was on the right path. On paper, his idea seemed doomed to fail. He wanted to sell coffee for $3 a cup in a market where the average American paid just 50 cents. Investors saw the price as outrageous. The idea of turning coffee shops into community spaces? Even more absurd. Howard struggled to secure funding, but if there was one thing he never lacked, it was persistence. After countless rejections, he finally convinced a few investors to take a chance. With their support, Il Giornale opened its doors, and before long, the business was thriving. But just as Howard was gaining momentum, an unexpected opportunity came his way. The original Starbucks founders were looking to sell the company. They had built something great, but they were ready to move on. They reached out to Howard, knowing he was the one person who could take Starbucks further. Once again, Howard needed money. This time, $3.8 million to buy 6 Starbucks stores. Finding investors wasn't easy. Many still doubted his vision, and just when it seemed like he had secured the deal, one investor turned on him. Instead of backing Howard, they tried to buy Starbucks for themselves, negotiating behind his back. The betrayal hit hard. Howard was running out of options, and for the first time, doubt crept in. But just as he was about to give up, a friend introduced him to Bill Gates Sr. That meeting changed everything. With Gates's help, Howard finally secured the funding he needed. In 1987, Howard Schultz officially bought Starbucks. Il Giornale was absorbed into the brand, and the small retail chain transformed into something much bigger. Howard had finally done it. He had transformed Starbucks from a small retail business into the coffee experience he had always envisioned. But he wasn't the kind of man to stop there. He had bigger plans. Plans that would take Starbucks beyond Seattle, beyond the United States, and onto the global stage. Starbucks was no longer just a store that sold coffee beans. It was about to become the coffee experience Howard had envisioned all along. But he wasn't done yet. The real transformation was just beginning. With Starbucks now running the way Howard intended, the next move was to make it a global brand. Howard took over Starbucks in 1987. At the time, they had 17 stores. Well, on taking over, he went on an expansion journey, and by 1998, there were several Starbucks stores in Europe and Asia. He stepped down as CEO of Starbucks in 2000 and embarked on an expansion campaign. In a bid to dominate the globe, Starbucks started opening 5 stores every day. This move saw this brand have close to 180,000 stores globally by 2008. Starbucks was everywhere, but this growth seemed to affect their quality. On realizing what had happened, Howard was back to being CEO. and the first thing he did was shut down Starbucks stores and ensured their staff got trained specially. Although this didn't seem like a great business move as they lost some money, it was worth it in the long run. Starbucks never seemed like a business that would take over the world. Nonetheless, Howard was able to see what other folks couldn't see. Unlike the average person, he saw this firm as a vehicle that could make his brand global, and he went all the way even when no one believed in him. His is a story, hard work, persistence, and believing in oneself against all odds. This is where we draw the curtains today. Before moving on to the next video, kindly hit the like and share buttons. Also, please subscribe to this channel to see more videos like this.